Everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Full Funnel Live. Today, instead of my dear co-founder Vlad, we have 𝗪𝗵𝘁, our long-term partner. And yeah, unfortunately, he doesn't have a shaved head, but hopefully the episode would be equally good. We've been connected to them for many years. He is a member of our Fullfunnel Academy, and behind the scenes, we were discussing with them the topic of today's episode: how to capture the signals, how to feed ABM teams, or if you don't have ABM team, marketing and sales teams, with all the engagement and intent signals to define the best next actions to activate your target accounts. The problem that we often observe in B2B markets, right? That a lot of companies, they deal with account blindness. They don't have holistic overview of all interactions, all engagement with their strategic accounts. Sales keep their conversations in Sales Nav, in Sales Loft, similar, let's say, sales development software. Marketing maybe tracks something in their marketing automation, etc. But these insights are rarely cross-shared, right? And then the problem is that obviously the signals are missed until it's a very obvious signal when a buyer kind of submits this web form on your website and requests a demo call. So we wanted to share with you the playbook, or how basically you can capture the signals, what signals you need to capture, then how to define the best next actions, because so far we have discussed during the prior episodes the different levels of demand and intent, right? The complexity of long sales cycles and demand generation for the long sales cycles. And then also with them behind the scenes, he is working on a very cool workflow to automate that, basically to automate the intent and engagement signals capture. And so this is what we want to present to all of you today. Dan, thanks a lot for joining after this long intro.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here. And thank you so much. Sorry for the disappointment if you were expecting Vlad with a shaved head. I asked Andre before the show if I should have shaved my head, and he said preferably, but didn't get to it. So maybe next time. And thanks. Great intro, and shout out to the Fullfunnel Academy, because that's what Andre started with. I have personally grown a lot from all the courses and the materials that we have access to in the Fullfunnel Academy, as well as the community itself. So I just wanted to say that, and I know that a new course is coming out, and I'm super excited to dive into that. But we put our little agency's team through every piece of training and boot camp that Andre and Vlad have offered, and especially inside the academy. So it's been super awesome. And yeah, so back to the question of signals and signal captures. Just maybe one sentence about myself, my humble self. We are a B2B GTM agency, and like many out there, we help companies get bigger and figure out GTM and then execute it. And what we have noticed is that more and more we ended up with signals. So we did a lot of GTM stuff, meaning content, social media, LinkedIn, ABM, A to Z, you name it, we did it. And we probably did too many things, by the way, as a side note. But the thing is that no matter what we did, and when we got very deep into execution, what we have figured out is that once things are in place, which are the fundamentals that you need to run go-to-market for high ACV accounts, once you have the fundamentals in place and you start executing, there is still a lot that can go wrong, even if you have the right playbooks. So I don't know if you've noticed this, Andre, but sometimes you feel like you're doing the right things, but something is still off. And we started feeling that more and more. And what that came down to, we had to realize, is that we were rowing in a boat that had holes in it. So the boat was slowly sinking, but we could still keep it going, but we knew that something was off. And what we had to realize is that stuff is falling through the cracks. So we were essentially losing a lot of the buyer signals, which in the previous years, when the market was easier and simpler, it wasn't really a problem because you could get away with less. So truth be told, prior to 2023, 2022, everything was way easier. Competition was a lot less. You could do outbound, cold outbound, and even that could bring some decent results or even good results. But for the past 2 years, what we're feeling and what we're seeing around ourselves is that it's getting super tough. So we started focusing on the things that we didn't need to focus on that much before because we could get away without it. And that came to be the signals. So these were the leaks in the boat where water was slowly, coming up and slowing down the entire boat and causing problems. So we're like, okay, if we don't fix this, then the GTM engine is never going to be as good as it should be or as good as it deserves to be. So that's how we ended up doing spending a lot of our time capturing signals and making sense of them.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, actually, making sense of them, because in reality, if you speak to almost any B2B marketing team, right, they would mention, yes, obviously we have demand generation vehicle in place. We run this, we capture, for example, webinar signups, or we run gated content and we send all of this to sales. And yeah, our sales team maybe tracks intent data and they do the outreach. The problem is that the playbook is very linear and standardized, right? We try to treat, because obviously, like you said, the market has changed, right? And the competition is way more complicated and the buyer journey is way more complicated. So just purely picking up the signal and send an outbound message, even if it's relatively personalized, it's not enough, right? So you are not one email away from sales opportunity, unfortunately, anymore, right? So the key point is combining all of the signals and making a conclusion. What would be the next meaningful step? And this is what we are going to discover in a moment, to discuss in a moment. Meanwhile, I saw a couple of questions. So guys, feel free. There is a blog called Q&A. Feel free to post all of your questions in that section, and we'll make sure that we'll cover all of them. Plus, we have received a lot of questions from you when you signed up. So we're definitely going to cover all of this. And quick question to you guys, where are you all joining us from? Let us know in the chat. Again, broadcasting from not sunny Spain, Valencia region. Then where are you based?
I'm in Budapest, Hungary, and I just dropped it in the chat where John had dropped a pretty good question that we're definitely going to get to.
Martin, your neighbor from Vienna.
Yeah, we got some people from Vienna.
Yeah, great to see. Let us know, guys, where you're all joining us from. And meanwhile, I will share my screen and just share a couple of questions. First of all, so let's quickly nail down Martin, Valencia. Good to see you, neighbor. So let's quickly discuss, first of all, what signals makes sense to track, right? And how should we approach them? So when it comes, basically, let's start with account intelligence, right? What we absolutely must know about our target accounts. So there are a couple of basic things. Obviously, we want to make sure that we have the buying committee in place, right? You need to have in one place all the buying committee members you as a team need to engage or should engage. Next, account enrichment, right? You need to have basic information that nowadays, luckily, you can use software like Clake to enrich this. But anyhow, company size, location, revenue, technology stack, whatever. These are the things that we need to have in place. And now the signals, right? So the signals are basically divided into two groups. Account engagement, and you can obviously have first-party engagement data, right? So, for example, like you signed up for this live podcast episode, right? And we have this data. We see that you have signed up. Some of you have attended it live, right? So this is the first party engagement data. And then we have the third party engagement data. So website visitors or engagement on different platforms where they could be, like review platforms where they could be reviewing your product, etc. And then we have the business triggers, or potentially the signals that tell you that there is a product need evidence, right? I don't want to call it buying intent signals. I think personally it's absolutely incorrect definition, due to the fact that the only buying signal that I think is true when the buyer reaches out to you and requests a demo, right? And this is at least the declared intent. The rest are just the signals that tell you that the account is likely to have a need in your product, right? And likely to be in the market. So these are kind of the first things. Next, I will just pick up another slide for you, just to show what types of data we can potentially track. And here we go, right? So from this perspective, right, what kind of data we can track? That could be, again, like all the engagement that is coming, all type of intent data, right? So the engagement, signups for a newsletter, engagement with your content, engagement if you post, let's say, content on LinkedIn or share on any social platforms, following your pages, etc., right? So then there could be these buying signals. This could be anything like or let's say ex-customer joined your target account. They announce some strategic initiatives that are related to your product, right? There could be like multiple signals that you can capture. The most important thing here is to sit down with sales and define what are the most important signals for us, right? What tells us, you need to answer these questions. What criteria, what signals will tell us that this account is aware of us as a vendor, right? What kind of engagement this account should demonstrate so we can call it a vendor-aware account. Why that's important? For a couple of reasons. A lot of sales teams that I've been talking to, they regularly complain about lack of account awareness. They simply correlate lack of account awareness to not enough pipeline coverage, to low reply rates, etc., right? So from that perspective, obviously, we can even make debates around this, right? If I will ask you guys, how would you define account awareness? I bet that everybody who is listening to us live would put different definitions of this. And there is no kind of unified or standardized definition. The only one good definition is that one that you made with sales. You agreed on specific criteria and then shake hands, right? That's the first one. And the second one is what signals might be product need evidence. What might tell us that this account is likely to have a need in our product, which means they are likely to have conversations with us, right? They are likely to engage with any playbook that we are running. They are likely to reply to sales outreach, etc. That's the key. So from that perspective, whenever you define it, the next step would be defining this playbooks, right, that are aligned with these signals. But I would love to ask you then, is there anything else that you would add to what I have shared?
No, I actually have a question. So I'm glad that you started with the fact that you have identified 17 sources of data in ABM. And I wanted to ask, because we're seeing this, that we think that the more, the better. And I sometimes fall into that trap of communicating that. But then I realized that any company I've looked at, there aren't that many information and signal sources that are relevant, that will tell us the story. So it's not like we need to, because, we tend to think, okay, mapping the buyer journey and getting the signals, and we tend to think of like detective work and patches and traces and, some hyper complex 5,000 piece puzzle, but it's really not. And I wanted to ask you if you are experiencing the same thing. But what we see is that if you know your 5 sources that are relevant in terms of signal sources that really signal engagement and interaction and, may I say, intent, and if you track and you make sense of those 5, 6, however many sources, but it's not 26 for sure, then you're going to be good. So I wanted to ask you, like, how many signal sources do you see on average that really makes a difference in companies' go-to-market and ABM?
I would say that for this awareness threshold, it's enough to define 2-3 signals. And for the product need evidence, it would be enough to define these 2-3 signals, right? You don't need to look at every single case. It's just enough to analyze the patterns between your won deals, right? And then you can see when you have, like, if you do an export of all of your closed won opportunities for the last 2 or 3 years, right? Definitely you'll see there were repetitive business triggers. That's the key. And if you'll try to measure every single signal, then you will go nowhere. Basically, the truth is that the more signals you are tracking, and especially if you don't have robust processes, the more problematic it will be, because you will be you or your team will be stretching to too many directions, right? That's the problem. There are tools, for example, like Common Room, one of the recent, like, let's say, ABM players. And I know that on their webpage, they claim, hey, if you'll sign up, we'll provide you 100 plus signals. Then, like, the question is, how likely you're going to track the signals and run any playbooks on them? In reality, what would be only possible if you do the same that most companies did for years, right? If they have more signals, also equals usually to more accounts, right? So then the problem that they have, the more accounts they have, they are targeting currently, the more likely they would do what we call one-to-many, right? Not really personalized engage. So it's usually ads plus like some basic personalization using standard knowledge about the specific vertical or domain, and that's it, right? And these playbooks are purely about let's book a demo, let's have a chat, right? The same as all of other signals. If the problem that I'm observing with the majority of teams, they don't have time. And they don't have time for meaningful engagement with the accounts, especially those accounts that are not ready to buy from, or at least not ready to buy from this specific vendor, right? Which means they need to invest a lot of time into deeper personalization, deeper engagement with the buying committee, etc. Now, what will happen if you try to track a lot of other signals, right? So you say, okay, we need to track at least 10 signals. That's fine, but then it means that you will lose the momentum and you won't do the timely engagement based on the information that you have captured. That's the first thing. On contrary, you say, no, we want to track multiple signals and then deploy the different playbooks. Then in reality, sales would ask to automate that process, and it won't be much different from traditional outbound, right? The only difference would be, okay, I have seen whatever. I have seen this, or the standard sales script. I have noticed that you are doing this, or I have seen you are doing this. Let's have a discovery, right? Pretty much it. And marketing, what marketing would do? Marketing would add that account to retargeting layer. As simple as that. Nothing else, and that's not different from how the majority of companies are running ABM, right, nowadays, and the exact reason why these programs are failing. So from that perspective, especially if you don't have robust processes and you don't have, let's say, an data owner, and it could be RevOps person, MarTech person, MarOps person, or sales ops person, whoever, until you don't have that person who actually holistically tracks that data, qualifies segments, and presents to you, you are likely to have a huge problem with capturing more signals. So 2-3 signals for vendor awareness, 2-3 signals for product need evidence would be good. And then the most important part is how to capture the signals plus how to make sense of them. So what I would love to ask, obviously, you can, the first answer would be you can capture the signals manually, right? And this is, in reality, a lot of companies are doing this. But I would love also to share your process, how you are thinking about capturing these different signals automatically. And then we can discuss how to make sense of that data and how to define the right playbooks.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that you dropped in there. One, I think that before I answer your question, I'd just like to underline it twice with bold, with a highlighter, that not all signals are created equal, and that it makes sense to differentiate between awareness signals and demand signals. I think that's how you used it. Because one of the things that we talked about that I think makes a ton of sense is that traditional signal tracking and signal capture, where we'll assign a linear score to signals, which means that an account can build up a bunch of awareness signals, for example, clicking on a newsletter, opening your newsletter. And if they do that enough times, then the score in your system that you track it is going to be very high. And you're going to be like, woohoo, look at them. They're hot. Let's reach out to them. And if you don't dig in deeper to see, okay, how does this score build? How's the score built up? So what does it consist of? And you see that it's 27 newsletter clicks, but like 0 demo requests, 0 bottom of funnel content, nothing else, like maybe a few webinar registrations. They register for every webinar of yours, but didn't attend any. If you don't have that nuance, if you don't have that understanding, then you're going to think, woohoo, this is a hot account. Well, in reality, it's not. It's just it needs to be helped to the next stage. And maybe figure out, okay, why aren't they digging deeper? Why are they stuck at the awareness level? And so I think that's something that isn't talked about enough. So I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, yeah, so let's get into the tech, shall we, and the details.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm not the one to like dive straight into N8N and make.com, so you will have to withstand just a little bit of thinking on this. And I'm going to show you. I'm trying to speak and share my screen at the same time, which is always challenging, but now I got it. Okay.
No worries.
So yeah, so just a few concepts. What Andre talked about is account blindness and the fact that you have a bunch of signals and you're hardly tracking any, but the bigger problem is the intelligence, meaning making sense of it. What do we know about these accounts and what do we do with them? Okay, and the current state of outbound, which he has termed account blindness, is that you have very disparate pools of intelligence within your company, within your go-to-market department. So sales will have some idea, marketing will have some ideas, product is going to have ideas. And they usually hardly ever overlap. So not only is there too few signals and the relevant signals not being captured, they are not made sense of the proper way. They are sitting in different systems. Classic source of misalignment. And then what happens with these signals is that, okay, whoever we can identify, we'll just reach out to them. and it goes straight to activation, right? Which is not ideal because very often most often it doesn't make sense to do activation. And then when you add AI to this logic, to this meta, to this system, then you get the spam cannon that you experience today. So you add some Clay or Apollo to this, then it's going to add some personalization, but it's still going to be irrelevant. It's going to have like dumb personalization, and you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. Okay, so this is like the current state of things. But account intelligence, which is the desirable state, is where you capture a lot more signals and stuff is made sense of. And the intelligence is, on the one hand, bigger than what we had up here, but maybe even more importantly, there is like it overlaps. It's in one system, okay? And when you have that level of intelligence, you can make good decisions. Do we activate? Do we nurture? Or do we just leave it alone when the time comes, when a threshold is met? Okay. And so when we talk about intelligence, it's usually the sources of signals. So it's both capturing the signals and it's also having the right playbooks and knowing what to do with them. And scoring is a big part of that. Now, I don't know if we're going to have time to get into scoring and everything, but yeah, just one more concept or one more idea. When we bumped into this problem as an agency, we started looking for tools naturally, right? So we went through all the platforms and most everything. And what we found was that the big problem is that everything is like a point solution, meaning it doesn't address the entire buyer journey. And by buyer journey, I mean something that is like the bow tie, which you see up here. I'm sure you're familiar with this. Fullfunnel have a similar model to this, but it's vertical. It's basically where you take a visitor or a prospect, a target account, from identifying to getting them interested all the way to selling them and then retaining them and then hopefully maximizing the impact. Okay, so all of the solutions which deal with signals, they're going to be like either sales centric, they're going to be somewhat marketing centric, and then you have a bunch of AI driven stuff that is for customer success and more for customer service. But the problem is that this, we found, is going to just deepen the misalignment between the departments. Why? Because each of these tools is going to put stuff into different databases. It's going to feed off of different knowledge sources, and it's going to create a mess, an AI-powered mess, which will be an even bigger mess because it's powered by AI. Okay, so the thing that, like, before we started building stuff, we arrived at this conceptually. So for go-to-market, you have a bunch of knowledge sources, okay? You have sales calls, insights, you have your playbooks and processes, all the full funnel stuff that you're learning. You have a bunch of content that you've created. You have product documentation, you have product marketing materials. You have your CRM, you have your customer data platform, you have external sources such as the internet, and you have your LinkedIn connections and competitor intelligence, blah, 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 blah. You name it. Like, there's a lot that you can argue is go-to-market knowledge and go-to-market data. And signals is just a part of this, okay? So it's just a little thing here. It's just one block. But you would think that ideally, in a nice world where everything is aligned, alignment happens partly because these playbooks are shared and all the knowledge is shared and all the information is shared and everybody can access everything. So that's why the stuff that we started building is not another siloed thing, but it's a system that leverages existing tools such as Make.com and a couple other signal capture tools that you will know that I'll show you. And they're just getting all the information from the right places. So you ask it a question, and then this intelligent little robot thingy is going to know where to look. Or you tell it to do something, and it will know where to get the information from and where to execute the task. Okay, so that's basically the thinking behind this. Okay. And the other thing that we wanted is to not build another mega, giga, big SaaS platform, because that's just not what companies need. They already have tech. Honestly, if you have a mature go-to-market team, you probably have more than enough technology to cover everything here and to capture signals and everything. You might need like a few key pieces of point solutions, but you have most of it. So we found most value because like this system doesn't exist. We found the most value in just building the underlying architecture and then using the existing SaaS tools out there to really make it work and put in automations and put in agents. Okay, now specifically when it comes to signal capture, most of the processes are really workflows. Okay, so it's not even AI. Where AI comes into the picture is enriching and researching accounts on the one hand, and then powering a chatbot, which is a different story, which I'll talk about later. But I'll give you a few examples. So the way we track signals is by setting up workflows such as this one. Okay, and what you have to see here is that this is built on HubSpot mostly. And in the beginning of the signal, no, actually, I'll show you a different one. This is even more exciting. Let me show you this. Yeah, this one. So you can have most any signal source that comes in through a webhook. This is a webhook, and this can be a webinar sign up. It can be a newsletter click. It can be any old thing. Okay. And then what's going to happen in these bubbles that you see here, this big ass process, what's going to happen is that we're going to take a look at, okay, based on the email address and the name of the person, or maybe the name of the company, we're going to figure out which company do they really work for, because very often you can't get that, right? So for Andre, when you registered for Andre's webinar today, you didn't provide your company name. All you provided was a name and an email. Well, we're going to use this agent and OpenAI to research you on LinkedIn and see if we can find you in HubSpot. Then, depending on whether you are in our HubSpot CRM or not, we're going to either add you or update you with the fact that you actually, registered for a webinar. And when that happens, scoring is occurring, meaning in HubSpot we have a different workflow for scoring because it's a bit more complicated than just scoring, okay? But because here we checked out your company and looked at who you are, we might decide that we want to learn more about you. So there's a little filter here that checks to see if you are an ideal ICP fit based on your geography, company size, and a few other factors that we have researched about you here. Okay, and if you are an ICP fit, then what's going to happen is that we're going to launch this research agent, which has a gazillion steps. Okay, it has like 11 steps through which it does deep research on companies according to our instructions. Okay, and this runs in a tool called relevance.ai. And what this tool does with the research is that it puts it into a Google document and uploads it on our Google Drive. Okay. And what it also does is it's going to notify the team. And the way it does that is it's going to drop this link into a newly created deal in HubSpot. I'm going to show this to you. So if you go to our HubSpot, this is interesting. The dashboards are unavailable for some customers. Somebody fell asleep at HubSpot. Okay, we're not going to go into dashboards. We're going to look at some deals. And the way we have this set up is that when anybody falls through this and this research is done, which you saw over here, then it's going to create a deal in the marketing funnel into the engagement category or engagement phase. Okay, and so it does that. And the Google document that I mentioned that it's going to upload, it's going to put it right here for the sales rep to be able to access like straight away. So they can just click this link and there is the research that the agent went into. Okay. Now what the agent research is totally up to what we tell it to research. So basically it can compile and research anything that is on the open internet. And as of a week ago, it can even research stuff like images on Google Maps. And so there's some crazy stuff that is happening right now in this area, but I'll just leave it at that. But what things we're specifically interested in is like a company specific lingo map. So, what like internal terms the company is using, because that's going to be super relevant when somebody reaches out. And we're going to want to dig into some industry trends that we will want to reference. And we wanted to reference everything, right? So just because we know AI tends to hallucinate. We want to make sure that it's going to provide links for everything that it collects. And when this is done, then here's a decision agent. Okay, so HubSpot is updated. We know some information about a company. And here's an agent that decides, okay, what should be the next step? And in this scenario, based on what it does, okay, based on its decision, one of two things can happen. One is that it's going to drop a notification into a Slack channel saying, okay, guys, here's this account, check it out. You know, it might be worth a look. Or if it deems that based on the other CRM data, that, okay, this company has engaged, it has reached the threshold where there's clearly demand in the early stages or in the later stages, and they're not just in the awareness stage, then it can trigger anything that we have set up in Lemlist and craft a personalized email based on, again, all the context from the CRM and anything else that we really feed it. So if you go back to this concept here, so when we personalize, when we decide stuff, we want to make use of all of this information. And of course, not every piece of information is going to be relevant, but like a lot of it is, okay? And we want to make sure that the agent has access to everything that we have here, and it's going to decide where to look, because this is actually several agents, okay? So it's not just like one genius sitting up here, but it's easier to depict it this way. Right. By the way, any questions up to this point? Let me see the chat.
We have a few, but I think we can cover them. I think what's important, and this is brilliant, right? So what actually we observe nowadays is that you can pretty much capture any signal that is important to you, right? So earlier you needed to do it manually. You need to invest time of your team member, right, to capture the signals, then qualifying the signals, etc. So nowadays you can make good workflows that enable you to capture all of the signals. The most important thing, though, I feel, is how do you make sense of the data that you collect, right? Again, what we have discussed. There is no problem to capture 100 signals, right? The problem is what do the signals tell you and how you can leverage them properly. What I have observed on LinkedIn recently, there were lots of discussions that the future of go-to-market is signal-based, right? Leverage signals, track them, etc. But honestly, every playbook that I have observed is literally, hey, I captured the signal, now let's reach out and pitch. So that's, which means that in some sense, right, in some sense, it justifies the broken MQL, whatever you'll call it, playbooks that companies were running forever, right? Because earlier for MQL, it was enough to, you know, have an account, signing up for your webinar or downloading the gated content, right? And then you can basically send it to sales and ask to pitch. Nowadays, you can literally tell, hey, here are the signals that we have captured. So these are the engaged accounts. Go and chase them, right? So that's the key. And this is where I feel the kind of all marketing and sales playbook or programs are falling down. So from that perspective, I would, if you don't mind, if you'll stop sharing your screen, I will pick up my screen again, and we can discuss these playbooks, and then you can also share, because I know you have pretty good workflow on automating it a bit and making an advice on what would be the relevant next step for the signals that you have captured or for the information you have captured, right? That's the go-to-market team. By go-to-market, I mean marketing and sales could leverage. So again, I will very quickly present this slide. And this is a part of the new demand generation playbook that we were recording with Vlad. So just to show it, right? Obviously, we have, I mean, here we have like 4 different actions or signals. You can replace action with signals, right? So it could be, for example, engaged with the content on social, right? So somebody liked your post or signed up for a product-related webinar. And then these are two different things, right? So product-related, if when you literally talk about your product, right? So you like whatever, if you're selling software, right, you pick up a specific use case or specific jobs to be done, and you show how to run these jobs to be done in your product. This is the product-related webinar. And this is like, if we'll use our marketing slang, this is more like bottom of the funnel activity, right? So people who are actually interested in your product would sign up. Now, the top of the funnel activity is something like this live podcast, right? So live podcast, it's not the webinar. We don't have like tons of slides, etc. It's not like outline structure. So it's more like community event where we're talking about the hottest things in go-to-market, right? So there is no buying intent, right? And we're not talking about our services at all, about our offering. We're talking about what, like the, again, specific challenge, specific trend, specific use case. And here it's more top of the funnel activity where the buying intent is low, right? Again, I'm always saying, I guess nobody who came for this podcast came just because they want to buy from Fullfunnel or from Dan's agency, right? Everybody came here out of curiosity because you are interested in this specific topic. And then we have these different signals like visited high intent pages, like pricing, book a demo, integrations, maybe like specific industry use cases, right? This is different level of intent and signals, but still it doesn't mean that this is the buying intent, right? It doesn't mean that the intent is high. Again, for me, the only one signal that proves the high intent is when a prospect either books a demo or reaches out to you on any channel and asks for that demo, right? This is the high signal. And from that perspective, it means that you need to adjust your playbooks to this level of intent, right? To this, let's say, level of signal that you have captured, right? The key points are what we have discussed in the beginning. You need to define with sales what's important for you to track, right? What are the signals that you would like to track? Next, what is the level of the buying intent here, right? And then define what would be the next meaningful actions marketing and sales can execute together to influence the buyer journey. Again, I'm not saying opportunity generation, but the buyer journey, because if somebody liked your post on LinkedIn and you're not connected to these people, right, it doesn't mean that this kind of post like doesn't mean the buying intent, right? And you don't need to send connection requests and then do pitch slapping, right? You need to start building the relationship with these people. So this is the key. And there are obviously there are no let's say there is no universal rule of thumb what playbook you should run in that specific situation, right? For many companies, there would be kind of variations of what you are seeing on the screen. And again, the only one right way to build these playbooks would be sitting down with sales and agreeing, like, what is the level of intent the signal demonstrates and what we can do together to kind of build that, or to influence that buyer journey. How can we move that specific account further in their buyer journey, right? That's the key. Now, the problem, again, especially for the smaller teams, for the bigger teams, it might not be such a complicated problem because they might have RevOps people, they might have basically anybody ops, right, who is capturing this data and who could make good sense of it. And because they are selling usually to enterprises, they would prioritize the signal. So more or less there is some process in place. While for smaller teams, it could be a bit complicated because then you don't have enough time to track this. You don't have enough time to capture all of these signals. So this is where I would love as well Dan to share his kind of workflows, what smaller teams can be doing to automate more or less, let's say, the next playbook definition. It doesn't, I mean, workflow doesn't substitute the playbook itself, right? But the advice on how or what appropriate playbook could be executed, this is something that you can also automate a bit.
Yeah, this is awesome. Like, I love this playbook. And you posted this, or you shared this image with me yesterday. And I was diving into it, and I was like, okay, how do we build this logic into the decision agent? Because it's just so simple. Like, when you are thinking about how to enable and empower reps to do the right thing and follow your stuff, like a 2x2 matrix is like, it doesn't get easier and simpler than that. It's just, I think it's awesome. Okay. So specifically to your question, how we do this, I'm going to show you the agent that actually does that, and then we're going to see it in action. But first, I think like this is a good time to address some of the questions that I'm seeing people drop through. So Christian was asking, because it's super relevant, what are the tactical ways that we capture company signals versus lead signals? Okay, we haven't talked about this, that we're doing account-based marketing, but we still want to differentiate between signals that companies are sending / accounts and signals that buyers or leads, people are sending. Okay. And the reason we want to do that is because it is highly indicative of an account's interest and engagement if more people are taking part in the buying process, and if more people are sending signals. So that is something that we have to differentiate between, and it's not obvious because a lot of the software that you have at your company only focuses on leads and lead scoring and lead this and lead that, and it doesn't really deal with companies, and it doesn't separate the two. Okay, so that's one thing, that you've got to score the activities of people and then all the relevant signals and properties of accounts of target companies. Okay, and the kind of workflow, which is again back to Christian's question, like the kind of workflow that we deploy is using some of what I have showed you in make.com, what I'm about to show you in N8N. And yes, Clay can be a part of this, and we are building processes with Clay because Clay is a really good ingredient in this. But it's not just that, and it's not necessarily Clay. Okay, and yeah, John had this question: where do you recommend we capture signals? And I wanted to address this earlier on, Andre, that this causes tech bloat. Okay, so where we capture signals, in my opinion, it should be in the single source of truth that is either your customer data platform or your customer relationship management system, probably the latter. Okay. Now, the problem with a lot of tech is because of the logic of how SaaS companies work. Tech companies want to take over as much of your processes as possible. So everybody's going to want to build a shadow CRM in their little point solution and try to get you to use that. Okay, so if you look at a LinkedIn tool, if you look at most any tools, they have like a mini version of a CRM built in there. Okay, and they're going to try to get you to use that, and they're going to put the data in there. But if you're like 99% of B2B companies, you have a CRM, which is supposed to be freaking that. So you don't need CRMs 2, 3, 4, 5, and 27 with 27 different tools. You just fucking want everything in one place, because that's where the information needs to live, right? So I am a huge advocate of putting everything into the CRM, which is, when I was showing you these little bubbles, and I'm just going to share my screen again because I'll be showing these agents anyway. You saw a lot of orange HubSpot bubbles. And there's a reason for that. It's because with the way that we run things, most everything runs into HubSpot. Okay. And yeah, I was sharing the wrong screen, by the way, right now, but this is actually Fullfunnel stuff. So don't look too closely. And so when we run scoring and signals, we run everything into HubSpot, apply our scoring logic through a Google Sheet, which we can alter at any time, and we don't need to mess around with that in HubSpot. So this is something that we like to take out of HubSpot. But then based on the signal, we score both the company and we score the person, so the contact. So you can say that here we're applying a score to the company, and then we're applying a score to the contact. Okay, and it's not always appropriate because there are things where when you can't score the company or the contact, but whenever possible, we score both. And then we keep a total score for the company and a total score for each contact. And that tells us a lot. Right, so I'm going to show you now back to Andre's question, the decision agent. Okay, and the way it works is, if I just share the screen over here, and yeah, I'll just share the entire screen. I've noticed that that's the safest option. So like when I share my entire screen, I'm not going to accidentally like start speaking on a screen or in a tab that isn't shared, and then people would drop in the chat later. And I noticed on a live webinar like 5 minutes later that I'm sharing something that is, I'm talking about something that is not shared. Okay, so real quickly, I'm going to show you this agent that does the decision making. And it is in this wonderful tool called N8N. And N8N is also a workflow automation tool, but it enables you to build your agent. Okay, and the way we do this is that here you have a chatbot, okay? Because what we haven't really talked about yet is how you communicate with this system. So when we have something like this, how do you communicate with this? How does that happen? So how do you tell the bot what to look for? And you tell the bot what to look for via a simple chatbot. Because that's the easiest way to talk to AI. You don't need any training for that. So our theory is whenever possible, we want to be asking questions and giving directions through a bot. And in this case, we have built it in Telegram, but you can build it in WhatsApp, you can build it in Slack, you can build it in a Salesforce app, in a browser extension, whatever. It doesn't matter. You can build a bot anywhere. This one's in Telegram because it's convenient for us. And here we're speaking to the agent, and then it's going to call workflows that dive into you see, it's called window buffer memory, and it's basically the summarization, the collection of all the instructions and information that you saw over here. That's all in the buffer memory. And the way it works in real life, and I just want to make sure that you now see this Telegram window that I just popped up. And no, you don't, right? Oh, there we go. Okay. So this is the Clear B2B bot, and I can talk to it. Okay. And because I know what accounts we have over here, I can ask it questions. So I can say, how has, I don't know, 𝗪𝗲.ai engaged with our content? And it's getting faster and faster, just because the models are getting faster and faster. And it'll take about half a minute to go into HubSpot and look at what's going on with this company and just check out everything that it has done and what signals we have captured from them. And then right now it's biased towards action. So it might right away come out and tell me like what next steps we should take with this account based on our recent engagement. And yeah, I think it's a bit premature that it goes like straight into next steps, but here you can look at this, that, okay, this account, it's registered for 3 webinars, clicked on 3 newsletters, Then we told it to always assess for our sales rep what's going on, like where are they in the buyer journey. So it says, okay, They appear to be in the early to mid stages of awareness and interest, and they are exploring resources, but haven't committed to attending live sessions, right? Because it said they have registered, but it doesn't mention clicks or anything. And again, so this is like from various signal sources, and it's pretty nice to be able to access it from just a single chatbot. And then it's going to come with the next best steps. Okay. And we've got I'll be honest with you, like we've got a lot of training to do on these. In part, we want to be implementing the stuff that Andre just shared with you, that decision matrix, which is really awesome, and some other things, but it's no big deal. Like it's pretty easy to train these bots. So it's like, okay, because they're in the early to mid stages, we're like, okay, it's going to say schedule a discovery call, and it can help uncover challenges and, send a personalized follow-up with tailored content. And it's going to recommend content, 12 years to a GTM framework. Okay, because we have fed it our entire content collateral, like our PDFs, our LinkedIn posts, and everything else. And here it's recommending one piece of content, or offer access to recorded webinars, because obviously they haven't attended webinars, but they have signed up. Because that could, it's giving more reasons. It could help address the timing issues and maintain engagement. And yeah, it tells you like what information to look for, because, we have limited information on them. But I'm lazy and I don't know about this piece of content, but I do want to send it to them. So I'll just see if it can dig it up for me. Where do I find this piece of content? And I'm hoping it can dig inside and, I don't know, send me a link, whether it be HubSpot or a PDF or whatever else. And then I can just, copy paste it and then send it to somebody. Sure enough, what is this? 12 years to a GTM framework. That's in our LinkedIn content repository at the following link. Oh, and it even gives me a summary of it. Okay, how nice of you. 27 GTM framework, yeah. And if I click it, sure enough, I will go to this LinkedIn article, which is, the 12-year thing that I posted about 10 months ago. Okay, so yeah, this is basically how it works. And then obviously, the next step for us is to make this super detailed and sophisticated and feed it even more knowledge and do it in a company specific way. So Andre, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. The key point is what I believe we can just sum it up, right? You need to sit down and define what signals actually make sense to your organization. And you don't need to make siloed decisions. You must incorporate, depending on your company, right? If you're a smaller organization, then you need to involve both sales and your leadership. If you work for a bigger organization, mid-size or enterprise, then it's just enough to sit down with sales, involve sales leader, and define what signals are important for you. Awareness signals, product need evidence signals. Next, define what the signals tell you. How likely they will define the stage of the buyer journey, right? At least you can, if it's hard, then you can just think about, okay, what is the level of intent demonstrated by this signal, right? What does it tell us? And then you brainstorm what would be our next logical steps to activate this account, because not all signals were created equal. Not all signals mean that you need to send this people or companies that engage to sales and ask them to pitch, right? We all know that it doesn't work, unfortunately. The key is to define them. And first of all, I always recommend run this process, run small scope pilot, run small scope experiment, right? Pick up any playbook, because first of all, you need to get a proof that it works before trying to automate everything. And unfortunately, we live in this era, you mentioned a couple of times AI, but even before AI, everybody was like technology-based. Hey, what technology, what software can we buy to automate this, But if you automate broken playbooks, you get broken pipeline results, right? So you need to basically nail down these playbooks first, run them on your own, and then figure out how to automate it, right? Because where automation helps, it helps you to scale the proven motion, right? Then you can, the better would be your demand generation, the more signals you will be capturing. The better would be your ABM, the more, let's say, first party and high intent signals you will be capturing, right? And the technology will basically feed you, your team, with the real-time insights, and you at the same time giving you a holistic picture of all interactions, so you will be able to execute the meaningful touch points. Because it reminded me about a funny story when, for example, there was a person, to give you a very good example. So there was an enterprise account that signed up. I'm just talking about one of the clients that signed up for the webinar. And in reality, this account was in the pipeline, but it was stalled due to several factors, right? And there was a relationship with account executive that actually during that week had time off. So instead of basically figuring it out, and also they didn't look at the fact that ex-client actually was working for this account. So instead of leveraging all of these factors, what marketing did, they sent it to SDR, and SDR was cold calling that person, and it was a very awkward situation because there was already a relationship, and it's negatively impacted the relationship with that account, right? That's the biggest problem, and this is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid this account blindness, and we want to make sure that technology enables us to see a whole picture and define the best next step to influence the buyer journey. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it a lot. We covered pretty much everything and the questions that you have asked. Next week, we have our annual Full Funnel Summit. It would be the 6th one. Then would be among speakers, so you'll be able to learn more about this topic. I know he has a pretty fantastic presentation. So the link is in the chat, and hopefully to see you all next week. Take care, guys. Cheers.
Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.